My name is Khan. I'm the owner and founder of Building Enterprise. We help contractors such as yourself win more bids. So today's video is about how to prepare an estimate that's not only a winning one but also is profitable. So there is a fine line between actually getting a job and making money. So if you overbid, then the chances of you getting the job are close to zero. But if you underbid, then you may get the job, but you may end up paying from your pocket, right? So we are not running a charity. This is a business, so we got to make money. So in order to make money, the first step that we covered was how to get the other GCs or the developers or architects or the project owners interested in your work, right? So for the sake of example, we would consider a concrete contractor over here. So let's say I'm a concrete contractor and I want to double my business in the next 12 to 24 months. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go out and I'm going to reach out to different GCs and I'll put myself in front of them and say, hey, I'm a concrete guy. I can do very good concrete scope of work. Right now, let's just say that one of the GC is impressed with your resume and your project portfolio and he gives you a project to bid. So now you have an invitation to bid sitting in your inbox, in your email. So what do you do now? Okay, and you are somebody who has been in business for some time, and I'm assuming that you can do the estimating part yourself, right? If that's not the case, then you would need a professional estimating company or an estimator. You will probably have to hire somebody to prepare the quantity takeoffs and estimates for you. But let's just, for the sake of it, assume that you know how to prepare estimates. So we will break it down into two parts. First one is quantity takeoffs, and the second one is the estimate itself. So when I say estimate, I'm actually saying to have a dollar amount assigned to each activity or to each material. So let's say you have a bid invitation. The first thing you've got to do is make sure that you have the complete set of drawings, you have the specifications available, you have all the RFIs, all the addenda, so you have the complete set of the drawing set available for the project. So once you made sure of that, then you also need to make sure that you have the clear instructions from the GC about which scope he wants you to cover. And so for example, if you are a concrete contractor, whether he's looking for just for the flat work or site concrete or just the building concrete part, right? So it has to be clear. Because sometimes what happens is when contractors, they put together a bid, then they put it in front of GC, and now it becomes very difficult for GC to level the scope. So if he has, let's say, 3 or 4 concrete bids, and 3 guys have only got building concrete included in it in their proposal, but the 4th one also has got site concrete in it as well. Right now, it would appear that the 4th guy's bid is a lot higher, whereas when you look at the scope is not level. So that's why it's very important for the contractor to make sure that whatever he is putting in his proposal, it is very crystal clear for the GC to understand, so that when he is comparing his bid with somebody else's bid, then he can have an apples to apples comparison. So secondly, it's always very professional to reply back to the GC and tell him that, hey, I'm bidding on this job. Thank you very much for sharing this opportunity with me. So this is another way of you communicating back to the GC and building a rapport that you are a thorough professional, and a thorough professional would do effective communication as well. All right. So once you have that thing, then there are multiple ways to prepare takeoffs. So what are takeoffs? Takeoffs essentially is a list of quantities and activities that has some dollar significance in the project. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have shower enclosures. right? And for shower enclosures, the plans do not show any waterproofing behind. But you and I both know that there is going to be waterproofing there. And even if plans don't show, but our quantity takeoffs should have this quantity or this activity covered. If we don't, then that will be money out of the contractor's pocket when he is actually executing the job. Right, so it's extremely important that the list of quantity takeoffs are extremely detailed and comprehensive. And if you do multiple trades, then what you need to do is split the takeoffs by trade or by CSI divisions. But if you are a concrete contractor, and if let's just say that you are preparing takeoffs for building foundation, then what we usually do is split the takeoffs by location and then by, let's say, structural component. So for example, you have foundation and you have continuous footing F1, F2, F3, and you have isolated footings F4, 5, and 6. So what we do, we take each and every structural component, let's just say continuous footing F1, and we will break it down into how much concrete is needed for this particular footing, how much rebar is needed, how much formwork is needed, how much excavation is needed, how much backfill is needed. So anything that you need to know about that particular type of footing, we put it in one place. Right. So what it does for contractors, and you can do the same as well, you will put everything in the right order, and just by looking at one module or one footing, you will be able to know exactly how much material do you need for it. Right. So this helps during the execution phase as well, because now you have a comprehensive list, and now if you're pouring a slab, then you can pick that module from the takeoffs, and you know how much concrete I need to order for that. Okay, so so what you're gonna do, you're gonna move from, let's say, continuous footing F1, then F2, then F3, then F4, then all the columns, beams, slab on grade, etc., etc. So they all should be included your takeoff sheet. Okay, so that's the first part, which is very, very important, because if you miss something, then, as I said, it's money out of your pocket, because GC is assuming that he has given you all the information necessary to bid that job, and now it's up to you to figure out what's related to your scope and what's not. Okay, once you have prepared that thing, make sure that you write down what you include in it and what have you excluded. So for example, in some cases, excavation is not part of contractor scope, and in that case, let's say if there is an excavating company who's taking care of the grading part or cut and fills and all the mass excavation, and they have the responsibility to do the footing excavations as well. And but if you put it in your proposal, then again, as I said earlier, there has to be apples to apples comparison for the GC if he is comparing two different bids from concrete contractors. And if your bid contains excavation in it and the other ones doesn't, and GC for some reason he's unable to pick that your particular proposal has extra scope in it, then he would just assume that your proposal is higher and he will not entertain you. Okay, so your bid should be very close to other contractors' bids, because even though it is a competitive market, but you know, if you reach out to different concrete suppliers, then the cost of 1 yard of, let's say, 4,000 psi concrete for you or for any other person should be there and thereabout, right? It should be very close. Okay, so once you have prepared a comprehensive list of takeoffs, then we move on to the estimating part, which is essentially assigning a dollar amount for each activity. So for example, if you are pouring a slab, right, so that becomes one activity, and let's say that slab is 1,000 square feet and it is 6 inches or whatever, so you can come up with any number, and let's just say you need to pour 50 yards for that slab. I'm just coming up with random numbers, right? Okay, so these are not exact calculations, but let's just say that you have to pour 50 yards of slab. So what you need to do is you need to split it into labor, material, equipment, overhead and profit margins, etc., etc. So how do you calculate labor for this particular activity? So you will have to assume a crew composition, right? So crew composition can be, I need a crew of 7 guys who would pour, let's say, 45 yards, 50 yards in a day. So that becomes their crew productivity. So you'll have to assume a set of crew who can do certain amount of work within a certain specified period of time, and that becomes the productivity. And you know how much you're gonna charge the GC for your each crew member. So this is how you know exactly how much it would cost to pour 50 yards of slab, and you divide that by 50 yards, so that becomes your unit cost per yard. It's pretty straightforward when you think of it, and we can show it to you in more detail in later videos how it is done. But the idea behind is that rather than having the total cost calculated for each activity, which you are going to do anyways, always try to look at it into unit cost per activity. For example, in this case, it is unit cost per cubic yard of concrete poured. It can be a dollar amount or unit cost for, let's say, 1 ton of rebar installed, etc., etc. Okay, so you have to calculate labor. The material is pretty straightforward, even though this is something which takes time. For concrete contractors, it's not that difficult. You reach out to different concrete suppliers. For example, we reach out to different suppliers in your area. We ask you who your preferred suppliers are. We reach out to them and say, hey, we need 1,000 yards or 4,000 psi concrete for this particular job. How much would that cost? And they give us a quotation, or they give you a quotation and you share the quotation with us. But in your particular case, what you can do, you can reach out to the suppliers and then they give you the quotations and you just put that number in there. So let's just say, for the sake of it, if it is 160 bucks a yard for 3,500 or 4,000 psi concrete, then you need, let's say, 50 yards. So 50 multiplied by, let's say, 150, so that becomes your total concrete cost for pouring slab. And you do exactly the same for the rest of the concrete structures, and that becomes your material price. You can get the material price for rebar. You can also get rebar installation prices in some cases. So you'll have to reach out to your preferred suppliers. And this is extremely important, that you have a list of suppliers that you work with so that you can get competitive rates. Because sometimes the margin of winning is so thin that it comes down to how good your procurement is. Right? So if your procurement is good, if your material prices are lower than most of your competitors, then you have a better chance of winning that particular job. Right? So be very do your due diligence about it. All right, go reach out to these suppliers. Same way you are reaching out to different GCs. Okay. So once that's done, now you have to calculate your overheads and profit margins. For that, you have to calculate the supervision cost, or if there are any temporary facilities needed, or if there is any insurance requirement, or bonding requirement, or inspection requirements, or safety procedures, or traffic control procedures. There are hundreds of different things that can influence your project. So you have to make sure that all your general requirements are taken account of, and to make sure that you note them down, so that you have a comprehensive cost base. Right. So once you have established your baseline cost, then you can add your the profit margins on top. Okay. And once you have done it for a few times, and once you have tried to prepare a process out of it, then it becomes like an autopilot thing. You receive a set of plans. We haven't spoken about what softwares you can use to prepare the takeoffs, but there are a variety of softwares out there. We'll have another video about which softwares you can use, but using softwares is always more efficient. Yes, the learning curve is there initially to learn the software, but once you have learned the software is made for your ease, not the other way around. Okay, so once you have prepared few estimates, then it becomes easier for you to quickly make more estimates, even though it's a time consuming part, especially preparing the takeoffs, because you have to take into consideration each and every detail, and you have to. Right, so if you like this video, we would really love if you could please subscribe and comment, because we're making a lot more videos to go into detail of all these topics, so that we can explain how takeoffs are done, how estimate is prepared, so that you can grow your business in next 2 years. Thank you very much.